Wow. Archie. I tell you what, Archie's a piece of work. All right. Now then. Okay. We'll ask that question first. Which alternative fuel burns with an invisible flame? Propane, compressed natural gas, methanol, or E85 ethanol?
Ain't it D?
You haven't burned a lot of it. It's actually C. Yeah, C. It burns with an invisible flame. If it burns with an invisible flame, how do they know that it's even burning? That sounds pretty dangerous, doesn't it? Okay, if you couldn't see the flame, not burn yourself. What is E85 ethanol?
Corn.
That's it?
Corn.
Huh? E85 ethanol. That's 85% alcohol, 15% gas. And those flex fuel vehicles will run off anything in between that, right?
Now, isn't that also a problem in racing? Some of the cars dragsters that use alcohol, there have been times where I've seen on one of those shocking videos where the guy was on fire and you couldn't see the flames.
Yeah.
Because of the gas that was on them. And I guess somehow the fire department knows it, but...
Yeah. That's nasty business, too.
Yeah.
Well, there's somebody that understood that stuff, was, aware of it. Hybrid... So that would be methanol. You're talking about methanol, probably, because that's what this is.
Yeah, alcohol, I guess. Well,
a hybrid electric vehicle.
Somebody said I'm going home.
A hybrid electric vehicle is submerged underwater. A rescue squad member consults automotive technicians for information regarding safety precautions. Technician A says there's no danger of electrical shock from touching the body of the vehicle or the frame in or out of the water. Technician B says if the vehicle catches fire, the extreme heat might cause the airbags to deploy. Which technician is correct?
B. Yeah, it's going to catch on fire in the water.
Would that be neither?
That's actually a C. Both of those guys are right.
It would catch on fire in the water.
No, he didn't say it was in the water with technician B. It was just in the water with technician B.
No, that's what the start of it was, is that it's underwater.
My bad. I'm sorry.
Well, I guess if it's underwater and there's not any water inside of it, the inside of it might catch fire. A hybrid electric vehicle has been involved in an accident and the driver is unconscious. The paramedics consult a technician for safety tips to extract the driver without electrocution. Technician A says, as long as the engine is not running, there's no danger of electrical shock. Technician B says that if the ignition switch is in the off position, the high energy relays are not energized. Which technician is correct? We're talking about high energy relays, right? Remember that? You remember the battery has got 3 relays back there. It's got one that closes positive, one that closes negative, and one of them is actually a short finding relay. So if those aren't, if everything is powered down, those contactors are open. So yeah, that's going to be a technician B there. Technician A says the high energy cables are immediately discharged when the ignition switch is turned off. Okay, where's the power coming from?
Battery.
Wait a minute. If the ignition switch is turned off, those cables are open. The battery's no longer in charge up. The battery's no longer in the loop. So where's the voltage coming from? I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying they don't come from the battery. There is power there. Don't you remember the capacitors?
Oh, yeah.
Got all those capacitors that are charged up. You got a way to lay bleed down? Because just one of those capacitors, and I tell you, you can take one of those capacitors and you can plug it into house current, which is only like 120, and charge that capacitor up. And Craig did this in that class. I showed you that. He got a big old long wood handle screwdriver and he shorted the terminal on the capacitor, and it made a blue spark about that big around, sounded like a shotgun going off. I'm not kidding you. It was like boom. You know how you can take the the condenser out of an ignition system and charge it up, and then whenever you bend it around, it goes pow. And that's a little bitty thing. Imagine a capacitor this big around that long. You know the one you charge up, and Brandon knows about this one you charge up and you lay around the shop and some yo-yo picks it up and goes because it bites him. But anyway, that capacitor is basically a battery that discharges very fast, but it can store a lot of energy. Okay, now the second one is, let me see, what did Technician B say? Technician B says if a patient needs to be extracted, the high energy cables may be cut as a last resort. Neither one of those guys are right. I mean, you're going to cut these high energy cables with something like a big bolt cutter here and all that, and you're going to go, you know. All right. Okay. Have you ever seen anybody weld with a car battery?
Huh?
Uh-huh.
Hell, I'm talking about genuinely weld. You get a couple of you get a jumper cable clips, and you get a good strong car battery, and you hook up the jumper cable clips to a car battery, and on the other end you hook it to your metal, and you got an electrode holder with a welding rod,
That's
and you can actually weld.
I saw my girlfriend's brother welded a piece of tin on his granddad's chicken house this past weekend doing that.
With a car battery, yeah, do that. Were you confused by all this, Wes?
He is.
It won't blow up.
Well, you're away from the battery. I mean, the battery's over here, and you got cables going over here where you're welding.
Yeah, but still.
Even if it does blow up, it's behind you. Boom. Now you're not going to weld for very long, but if you just need to run a short bead, you can weld. You know, like that. And you're scared of that, ain't you?
I wouldn't do it.
Yeah. Ask Michael about it.
I ain't scared to do it, but I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Welder's $69.95 Harbor Freight. That's cheaper than a
Yeah, that's
battery.
buy a battery. It's cheaper than a battery. The Harbor Freight wire welder. Okay. All right. So you're going to do your. Let's see. How many high voltage cables supply electrical power to the high voltage components at the front of the vehicle?
4.
2 or 3 on some vehicles.
Hey, I was right.
Okay. Which is true of high voltage battery electrolyte? Is it flammable? Does it create noxious fumes? Is it explosive? None of the above is correct.
You don't do none of that?
No. If none of the above is correct, it don't do none of that. What is the pH of the electrolyte in a hybrid electric vehicle's nickel metal hydride battery?
And it's
What's the pH of water?
14.
7. Yeah. But 13.5 is the pH of the electrolyte. You marked 7, didn't you? Look at him. Yeah. I was talking about water, not electrolyte. Why did you go there? Why'd you go there? Okay. 7 is the pH of water. You go one way, you get alkaline, the other way, you get acid, right? How should airbags be addressed in an emergency rescue situation?
Both A and B.
Both A and B. Wait 90 seconds for the airbag. I tell you what they do. If you own your airbag stuff, they will take those cutters. I'm talking about for the regular battery, not the hybrid battery stuff now. And they cut the cable, and then they cut it again about that far from the first cut so that there's no way they can touch. That's what they're trained to do. Now, there was a video that we saw of these first responders out there. They had a video camera running, and this fireman's climbing in there. And they had to do the jaws of life thing to get this guy out of the car. So they jaws of life the seat over there, and the airbag module was right there on the hump between the two seats. And they hadn't killed the battery and waited because they couldn't get the hood open because it was jammed and all that stuff, you know. And there was no way they could get under the car to cut the battery cable, so they just figured they'd wing it. And so the airbag lights off and gives the fireman a concussion, you know, because he's leaning over this thing, boom, and it blows up in his face, you know. That had to be, and that's how you do. All right, but see, these first responders have got the dangerous stuff that they got to deal with anyway, but now they've got these high voltage, you know, stuff and all that. Okay, if the 12-volt cables have been cut, what is the state of the high voltage system? The high voltage system is depowered. Let me ask you this. What is it that closes the contactors? 12 volts. When the 12 volts energizes and closes the contactors, that's when your voltage is flowing through the contactors, and it's going to go up there to everything that's high voltage powered, which would be what? What's high voltage powered on a hybrid vehicle?
Air conditioner.
Air conditioner can be, and not all of them, but only it can be. What else?
The motor.
And the transmission. The two motors and the transmission. Right? They got all that. But all of that's going through this big inverter. You know, every motor has got an inverter driving it. Because those motors run on AC current, and you got DC coming out of that battery, you got to change it to AC current. Right?
Good God.
You know. Look at that. The 10 o'clock phone call just came in.
Oh.
Don't you just love it? Right square in the middle of when we're in here, the
Should
phone
just
call.
go in there and unplug the phone.
Yeah. Well, I don't need to know I don't need it on here. That's where it rings about 3 times. It goes to voicemail anyway. Okay, and a hybrid electric vehicle.
If you don't mind, I'm going to get that because that might be Miss Dr. Cannon calling.
She's probably, the voicemail's already got it now, I think. In a hybrid electric vehicle, where is the high voltage battery normally installed? You can call Dr. Cannon if you want to see if that
I
will
don't
work.
remember.
You got it. It's in there.
Oh.
Hey,
You gave it where you gave it
Yeah,
to
let
me?
me see if it was her. Yeah.
hey, Mr. Ray.
Huh?
Number 9.
Number 9. The 12-volt cable's been cut. It's B. The high voltage system is depowered.
We're talking about 12. Being 8.
12. I didn't go
I mean 10, my bad.
In a hybrid electric vehicle, where's the high voltage battery normally installed? Behind or under the back seat? Now, this one here, where is it in a Chevy Volt? You know?
Ain't it on the passenger seat?
What?
See here, it's right in the middle. Runs down the hump.
That's pretty cool.
See that? Runs down the
Oh, I
hump.
see it.
Did they figure out why it's catching on fire?
Yeah, I think they pretty well got that took care of. And look at there. You can actually do the OnStar My Link thing with your cell phone, and you can keep track of your battery charge in your Chevy Volt. Is that cool or what?
There you
You
go.
guys want to flip through that, you can.
They look cool.
I mean, Chevy Volt's a pretty cool car, really. It's expensive as all
Yeah,
get
it's
out.
about $50,000.
Most of the time, it's going to take you a long time to recover the extra money you spent buying a hybrid or an electric car. So, unless you buy a used one, you know, and you can fix it. If you buy a used one, you can fix it up and you can drive for no gas, almost, if you're going in short distances. If my wife had a hybrid car, she just goes from our house to the bank and back, she would almost use no gas, almost none. But every 2 weeks, I have to put about $15 worth of gas in her vehicle. It would take us a long time to recover that $40,000. So anyway, what the cool thing about the Chevy Volt is, it has a 3-gallon gas tank on it, and even if the battery's completely dead as a hammer, you can drive that sucker. You can put 3 gallons in it and drive it. Put 3 gallons in it and drive it. You can drive it as long as you want to without the battery with the battery slam dead. Because you see that it's not that. It's not hooked up the same way. The only time that the engine doesn't charge the battery on that
Brakes
one.
do, right?
No, well the brakes do, but also when you plug it into the wall, it charges it. But when you're stopping, you're going to be charging it. But the engine, was that her?
No.
Oh. All right. Now then, in a hybrid electric vehicle, they're usually behind or under the back seat. You know where they are in a Honda Accord, right?
What?
If you take the back seat cushion out, all that stuff is right behind the back seat on a Honda Accord. If you open the hatch and pull the deck out on the little Honda Insight, all of that stuff's in there. Now, the Honda hybrid is a totally different creature than the Prius or any of the other ones. I mean, it's just totally different. Okay, now, if you've got these motors that actually drive the vehicle down the road, if you've got a Toyota Highlander that's 4-wheel drive, it's got to have an extra motor to turn the other axle. See how that goes? What about the Chevy pickup trucks that's got 2 big electric motors in the transmission? Those are hybrid. They look like a plain old Chevrolet pickup. They're just as hybrid as they can be.
I don't know why you did that.
They also had, they also had the ones with the big starter generator on the front, and a big wide belt on it. And when you stopped, the engine would die. When you went to take off, it was like a golf cart. That thing was starting the motor back up, and you could go on. Didn't have a starter. Those were only like 36 volts, though.
Well, yeah.
And, all right. So now let me hit you with this. What voltage will be found in the orange hybrid electric vehicle cables? 144 to 300. What if it's 36 to 42? What color are those cables? Blue cables. You remembered that, didn't you? Orange cables connect the high voltage battery to the hybrid electric vehicle electric motors. High voltage may also be connected to the AC compressor, which is what you said earlier, right? So you got high voltage circuits controlled by what? That are in turn controlled by the ignition switch. Main relays. There you go. See, this stuff, the mystery goes away after a while, A lot of times it's only when you first have to work on one of these hybrids, it scares you to death, because you're terrified of it. And mark my words, if I can make it happen before the end of this semester, I'm gonna show y'all some heavy duty stuff. As if we are, you're already doing heavy duty stuff, aren't you? That's okay.
We need some more.
What I do is I get the big hybrid battery out and I say, stick out your tongue. You know. Boom! That's a joke. All right. That's my tagline. Stick out your tongue. You know, I got a pair of, wire cutters in my hand. All right. High voltage. Okay, wait a minute. If a hybrid electric vehicle is submerged, what causes the high voltage relays to turn off? The ground's fault circuit detects a connection between the hybrid battery and the vehicle body ground. And I told you before, the hybrid battery is not connected to the ground, to the body of the car anywhere. It's totally isolated from the body. So none of the hybrid battery circuit is ever touching the body ground of the car. And so if there is a fault detected, like for instance, let's say somebody ran a floor jack under the car and they jacked it up and they pinched the orange cable and crammed it against the car body, the hybrid system would shut down and it wouldn't work. You'd have warning lights and all kind of stuff going on. Then you got to go hunting for a problem. So that's going to be a B. Okay, now then, we got true or false here. 50-50 chance. Whenever people try to wing a test, when they try to wing their way through the test, they typically do better on the multiple choice ones than they do the true false ones. Why do I suppose that is?
True.
Murphy's Law. If there's two ways to do it and one of them's wrong, you're going to pick the wrong way, right?
Yep.
You ever seen that?
Awesome.
You ever seen that, Wes? If you had this piece in your hand and you didn't know which way, and Brandon probably too on his transmissions, if you got a piece in your hand and you're not sure which way it goes, chances are if you just put it in there one way, it's not going to be the right way. If you just kind of stick it in there,
Now, if you get true false, supposedly if you go true for everything, you'll get a 65 on average. Most professors, you think 50-50, but most professors, when they're writing it, they have a tendency. Professors are trained to only give you true factual information.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard for them to give things that are not true.
Well, thanks for telling us how
Unless
to
you're
think
Richard.
about
All
that.
right, Mr. Richard.
Hey, that's what a bachelor's gets you, is how to take good tests.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily learn anything.
A vehicle. I had one guy that did so well out there in the shop that he just maxed everything out. He got all the worksheets knocked out. He just did really good work all the way through, and he knew that his shop score was so good, and his daily written tests were so good that he just winged the final. Now he lost a couple of letter grades because he made crappy grades on the final, but he didn't, just blew through them, because he didn't want to go to the energy. The vehicle using ethanol or E85 as a fuel can be treated the same as a gasoline fuel vehicle during an accident event.
Yes, true.
That sounds like it's pretty much true, doesn't it?
True.
Diesel fuel is more flammable than gasoline and needs to be treated with special precautions.
True. False.
Diesel fuel is not more flammable than gasoline.
Oh,
Please. All right. The electrolyte in the nickel metal hydride battery poses an extreme risk to rescue personnel.
Sounds true.
Does it?
Oh, what if they?
Is that true or false?
True.
I need to know an answer on that, guy.
I think it's true.
Huh? Can anybody tell me? Can anybody tell me with impunity?
What?
She said, what?
I don't know about batteries. So
I'm going to say false.
Okay, so what's your rationale for that?
Well, first off, they wouldn't have R&D departments think through things like that, so they're going to have safe procedures for rescue. They realize that car accidents are going to be inevitable.
Well, he's right. See how he reasoned that thing out? He's correct. It's a false. That is a false statement. All right. So let me see here. The high voltage system main relays shut off as soon as the ignition is turned off.
Oh,
That is true. We already talked about when you turn off the key, the high voltage main relays, because 12 volts turns on the relays. Right? And how does